With the open meeting law, the Lake Hopatcong Commission has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof delivered or mailed or electronically mailed to the following: Daily Record, posted on the Lake Hopatcong Commission website. Okay, we have a flag to salute, or we don't? Oh, there we go.
There it is.
There you go.
All right.
Pledge
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag,
United
United States of America,
to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call a roll, please.
Sure. So, Commissioner Crowley,
Here.
Fish,
Here?
Will Susan, McCarthy,
Here.
Ozowski,
Here.
Probs. I think I saw Ann on.
She needs to unmute herself.
Here. Yeah.
She's there, but she's not muted.
And you need to unmute yourself.
Hold on, I got it. Hi, Ann.
Colleen got you.
Okay,
Okay.
I didn't know I was muted.
Servas, Steinbaum,
Here.
Stevens,
Here.
Tessier,
Here.
Zochek,
Here.
Senator,
Here.
Gilfillan, Hirschfeld,
Here.
Castellan,
Here.
Foley,
Here.
Solaro,
Here.
and Smith.
Here,
Okay.
we don't have any use for, do we need an executive session?
No, nope.
Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes?
We have two sets of minutes to approve. Want to take them together?
Yeah, sure. It's not a problem.
So move.
Second.
Who had that second?
Solero.
Okay, thanks.
They missed one of the meetings, just abstain on that, that's all. Or any addition, changes to the minutes? Let's call a roll, please.
Sure. Crowley,
Yes.
Fish,
Yes.
McCarthy,
Hey.
Ozowski,
Yes.
Probs,
Abstain.
Steinbaum,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Tessier.
Yes.
Bob, were you at the last meeting?
I think I was.
Yeah, he was at the last meeting. Yes, he was, yeah.
He was
Okay.
commenting about his hat. Or lack of there.
Okay. Solaro
Yes.
and Smith?
Yes.
Okay.
The treasurer's report and the list of bills.
All right. As of today, we have $207,061.59 in the bank. And there are 14 bills that are due to be paid, totaling $28,243.15. And I can read all those for you if you want. If not, I can send you an email.
Does anybody have any questions on any of the bills?
Well, just Fred Lubnau's on the line, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could defer that one HAB grant bill until we actually get reimbursed from the HAB grant.
I'm not. Is that the March invoice for specifically the HAB grant?
Yes.
Okay, then yes, that can be. Yeah, anything that's going to be paid directly through the grant will either be we'll wait to get. We will wait until the commission is reimbursed, or once you have the advance payment, then you can pay us directly. But yes, that can be deferred.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can we make a motion to pay the bill list with the exception of the HAB grant?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on any of the rest of the bills?
Nope.
Call roll, please.
Crowley,
Yes.
Fish,
Yes.
McCarthy,
Yes.
Wazowski,
Yes.
Probs,
Yes.
Steinbaum,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Solaro,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
You got any correspondence other than, you got the land use?
Yes, so we had land use applications in Jefferson, Roxbury, and Hopatcong come up. They've been holding their meetings on Zoom just like we are. We received the draft commission audit, so I sent that out to everyone to review. And Fred just sent out the Princeton Hydro Biochar report, which I sent out today for everyone to review. That includes the locations for some of the HAB projects. It's proposed locations for some of the biochar, which would be input to remove phosphorus where water comes into the lake at the inlets. And the last thing is I've been back and forth with Chris Abrupta about the rain garden program for Lake Hopatcong. So we've had some correspondence from him. And I think we've settled on a date of June 4th for the first workshop, and that's part of the HAB grant. And one other thing, I received a phone call from Roxbury's land use chairperson. She was just appointed. Her name is Joyce Dargle. And she just called to introduce herself, and she was happy to hear that the commission had hired a planner, and they were excited to work with us. So that's it.
So that Rutgers Rain Garden project meeting, that would be a remote?
That would be through Zoom. We had originally proposed 4 separate sessions, and one would be in each municipality. But now with the COVID response, what we're thinking is on June 4th, we'll do one in the morning and one in the evening, so 10 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. People can log on and get information about the rain garden program. And then there'll be a separate session for the design workshop so that people will sign up for a time slot. And then they'll meet with the Rutgers engineer or landscape architect. They'll go over photos or site plans from a homeowner, and then they'll design specifically for that home a rain garden for their property.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and depending whether people are if you're within the Lake Hopatcong watershed, you're eligible, if you install the rain garden, you're eligible for up to $450 rebate through the program.
Where does the rebate come from?
It's included with the grant. It's through the HAB grant.
How do you log into those meetings?
It'll be through WebEx, and Rutgers will send out a link.
All the commission members will get?
Yep, and we'll send it out to the municipalities so that they can, so this is preliminary. We'll send it out to the municipalities so that they are aware that this is coming up, and they can promote with their newsletters and things like that.
Great.
Yep. That's all I have on correspondence, Ron.
Okay, anything else about the land use? Anything else going, we're all good?
I think we have a land use update later. So that was just generally the correspondence that we had received through land use.
Well, the chairman's report, there's the only the main activity we had is trying to figure out now where our financing is, how our financing is going to go. The EP tells us that we're short money in that, whatever that motor vehicle fund is, where you get where the revenue comes from. Marty Kane and somebody else told me that in the original legislation, when they put it together and said they would give us $500,000, that it was estimated, and the number was that they were collecting $800,000 to $1 million a year. So based on that, I can't figure out how they're short. But be that as it may, and Colleen spent a lot of time putting together. Is this the time to go through this, Colleen, or do you want to do it later?
We could go through that now or later through the weed harvesting update if you want.
Yeah,
It's up to you.
Okay, so other than that, I don't have much else. I'm gonna go around the table with the commissioners. Anybody have anything, comments?
I just think, like the rest of us, I'm very much concerned about our funding going forward.
Yeah.
That the state is going to be in big trouble, as well as the local communities, even the county budgets. And that's my major concern about what will happen. On a positive note, we've had a cold spring, and a really cold spring, especially the nights. And the lake temperature is much lower than it usually is this time of year. And I'm looking at that as a positive, and it might prevent us from getting much or any HABs this summer. That's what I'm hoping. That's all I have.
I just want to follow up on what Fred said in a way. Yes, I'm also concerned about your long-term funding for the lake, because there's going to be a lot of cuts everywhere throughout the state, a lot of cuts in municipal budgets. This economic impact's going to be big, and I think you should be very judicious with the remaining funds that you have. And again, as before, it might be a day that you will have to look at some alternative revenues, like we had done those reports for. So as things roll out, we're going to see it's tighter and tighter. And when it gets down to people paying policemen, keeping state troopers on, or funding Lake Hopatcong, we know where the priorities are going to land. That's all.
Anyone else?
I have a question. In the letter from Steve Mattis, our funding is dependent on revenues from power vessel license fees.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I mentioned. We're supposed to get 500,000, but they're telling us there's not 500,000 there.
That's right.
What we heard, and the record showed, I guess in the past, that they had 800,000 or $1 million a year collecting. I don't know how they're that short, but that's a different story for a different day, I guess.
Can we demand that information? Because he's saying, because of we're taking his word that the revenue fell significantly under their expected revenue from these power vessel license fees.
Even if it fell down, I can't believe it went below 500. But we have to find if that number was true. We heard the number, and Marty and others are trying to find something in writing that we can verify that they do have $1 million. They collect in that fund.
It's all documented somewhere at Treasury.
Yeah, Senator Bucco had.
We can't get a copy. It's hard to get a copy of any of that stuff.
Yeah, Senator.
Yeah,
Bucco
if I could on this, Colleen. Yeah, you're probably going to say it is. Senator Bucco has requested. Was it like the last 7 years, Colleen?
Yeah, I think he got 2012 through 2016, and then he was requesting more recent, like 2017 through 2020.
And there's two factors really at work here. One, supposedly there's actually less boat licenses being issued now than there were in the past. And as Colleen keeps reminding me, motor vehicles has been closed now for 2 months, so no fees have been collected.
And this would be a time of year where everybody'd be paying those fees and getting ready to go out for the
Yes,
summer.
absolutely. Trying to get the boats in the water. Yep.
And the other factor I think you have to keep in mind with this is you pay off for your boat license. It's $16 for 4 years. So it's like $4 a year which is probably about what it was when I was 13 years old and I got my outboard license. So it is a pool of money. It's not as, large as you think it might be, because it has never been moved up over the years when all those other fees were moved up.
I'm not sure I was aware that our MOU agreement was dependent on the state raising these revenues. Because that's what he's saying, that we have to expect that we cannot meet our.
Well, the way that the senators got this legislation approved was, rather than trying to rely on it being funded through the budget process every year, they tied it to a set sum of money so that it would be funded every year. And at the time, the numbers they had was about 800,000 plus came into that fund. So requesting 500,000 would never be a problem for the Lake Hopatcong Commission being funded. Obviously, when you start getting extraordinary occurrences like this year, it's become an issue.
I don't think it had anything to do with what's happened this year. I think it may reflect because they're not bringing, this year, it can't be that up to date. But last year with the HAB grant, the HAB problem on most of the freshwater areas where you need to buy a boat license, there was a lot less voting. So it might reflect the HABs that were statewide last year.
I mean, it is something that you get when you get your driver's license that you add on for an extra $16 for 4 years. So you would hope that it wouldn't have had a huge effect last year, but they do tell me that the number of boat licenses over the last 10 years has actually decreased in the state.
Wow, that's hard to believe with the new launch on Lake Hopatcong.
They made it difficult to get now. Remember, there was no test years ago.
That's a very good point, Ron.
There's still no test for a boat license.
Yeah, there is. I had to take an 8-hour course.
Well, that's not for your license. That's for your.
It was for my boat
They
license.
won't give you give you a license unless you present your voter ID safety card.
Yeah,
That's correct.
8 hours.
Yeah, you need to have that.
You need the card.
Yep.
Fred, you were grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Didn't matter. You need the card when they renew.
When you renew, yeah.
Right.
But I think the funding is in the statute, not in the MOA, right? That was
In the statute.
Correct.
In the statute.
and
That is correct.
up to 500,000.
No, it doesn't say up to.
$1, you only get $1.
No, it doesn't say up to. It says 500.
Right.
I'll have to check again.
But obviously, the treasurer has taken the position that if 500,000 doesn't come in, I don't give you 500,000.
Because it's from a fund, and if the money's not in the fund,
Right.
but if it's more than 500, they keep the rest.
Yes, you're right.
So in our MOU agreements, was everybody aware of that? That these amounts were to be determined annually?
Yeah, he doesn't have the money well, the MOU is the 350,000. That'll be determined annually, yes.
But he's saying that we should not expect to run our weed harvesting program in the fourth quarter.
Right, because he doesn't have the money to give us. He has to give us the money so we can pay the harvester thing. That's part of the 350. If he doesn't give us the 350, they're not going to run the harvest. That's what he's saying. I don't believe he has the nerve to not cut the weeds.
I thought we were the managers of the weed harvesting.
We are. We sub it out through DEP now, through Josh and through Melissa.
The other thing I just wanted to raise was Dave Geddick brought to my attention, was one of our marina operators, that a lot of people, when they'll come into him, they'll think all you need is that boater safety certificate to operate a boat. A lot of people don't even realize you still need to pay a fee to get that the boating vehicle thing.
Yeah.
So that's something we may want to, when the Boating Regulation Commission comes to Lake Hopatcong, hopefully for their July meeting, to raise to them that seems to be a real issue of confusion, that whether people even realize that they have to pay extra for their boating privileges in the state.
Are we still on commissioner comments?
Yes.
Okay, so as some of you know, I sent around an email earlier just to let you know that Senator Orho had asked me to participate in the governor's Restart and Recovery Advisory Council. I sent you the link to that. It's on the governor's website under his press releases. And they've assigned me to the Tourism and Entertainment Subcommittee as a representative, or to act on behalf of the Lake Hopatcong Commission. So if any of you at any point have any comments or concerns about the economy, restarting and reopening businesses, etc., protocols, safety procedures, anything that you might think relevant, please let me know. We haven't had any type of meeting yet. I'm still waiting to be contacted. According to the governor's website, they're supposed to set up meetings this week. So if there's any news to report, I'll pass it along to everybody. And in the meantime, if you have any comments or questions or concerns, please let me know. Obviously, my concern primarily is the Lake Hopatcong region, the watershed. And, I think what the senator's concern is that our area of the state, we need to make sure we don't get lost in the sauce or forgotten about, because there's a lot of concern, not only countywide, statewide, nationwide. It's a mess. We have to balance safety and health issues with getting the economy going again. So anyway, any comments at any point you want to chat, please feel free to call me.
Okay.
And did you get my question about the HAB economic study?
I don't know. I don't remember seeing the question. If you sent it earlier,
Yeah.
I can look and I'll respond. But
I didn't know how we could combine the HAB economic impact study moving forward in your area on the governor's.
That's something I'm very mindful of, because we had a head start on taking a hit last year in this region. The HAB crisis basically shut things down.
Right.
Now we have the coronavirus problem, and God forbid we have another HAB problem this summer. I am encouraged by what Dr. Steinbaum said. But on the other hand, I was running along Hudson Avenue the other day, and we already have in the back section, the north section of River Styx, we have this skim coating of that, what I call that muck already, which, it's a small section over in the corner, but before long, if it warms up, it's probably going to spread across that whole section, just based upon what I've seen in the past. So I'm mindful of HABs. I'm mindful of coronavirus. There's a lot to be concerned about, but we have to do what we can to safely open and proceed forward. I don't think we have any other choice.
Question for Colleen: who's managing that HAB economic impact study?
I guess you're talking about what we've brought up in the CAC meetings.
Not sure where I saw it, but
so yeah,
I thought we voted. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that was brought up in the CAC meeting, and then Fred Steinbaum had a conversation with another group about an economic study of the lake, so that we could say, how the lake was impacted by, certain things like a HAB issue on the lake. But we haven't taken any action towards hiring someone to do that study.
Okay.
Actually, I spoke to
with this latest
about that.
We've kind of put aside for the moment. But I think, Colleen, I'll forward it to you, and at some point get it out to everybody on the commission. Dan, let me just comment as far as boating safety at this time. Bridge Marine has some excellent suggestions. I think I saw it on the Lake Hopatcong Foundation website. You might pick up on those for boating safety in this crisis.
Okay.
But medically, for me, it all has to do with testing, which I know is out of your purview.
Anybody else?
Can I comment on something?
Sure.
I spoke to Senator Bucco about the funding and the feasibility study and the economic study about the lake. Now, his father did a study years ago, which is obviously outdated by now. But the place that did it was actually down in Trenton. Was the their aides, the ones that put together their bills and things like that, and they did the study as far as the economy goes up here on the lake. Came up with some big numbers. The amount of taxation that the state makes from here, and it's a lot of money. So I think he can have that done again on the state level.
Who did the OLS?
That the state will do for us.
I think that was the 2008.
SCA?
Rich, I have a copy of that study, and the numbers weren't near as high as I would have expected. But I'm trying to correlate with some of the things that they did with this proposal from this economic output. I've been trying to compare them and see what we can come up with.
Legislative Services was the outfit that did it.
OLS, yes, okay.
Yeah.
I thought I remember it was $44 million in sales tax revenue directly related to this lake per year.
I don't remember the numbers, but it was up there.
And for 500,000 out of that's not a lot.
Yeah, it's true. No.
I have a question for Fred, just a feeling on these spring conditions with all the rain and the cold water. What is your thoughts on the HAB resurgence?
It is true that it's been cooler, but hydraulically, I'm kind of worried because even though it is cool right now, it doesn't take much time for the HABs to really get going. I mean, within a period of a few weeks, the lake warms up and they can just immediately start growing. What I'm more concerned about is, number one, we had a mild winter. And number two, hydraulically, this is similar to what we experienced last spring. Remember last spring, it may not have been as cool, but it was wet. And I'm just afraid if we go into June and like what we saw last year, the sun starts shining and all the runoff has, brought in all these nutrients. We see some elevated nutrient concentrations going into June, then we could have a similar situation. Now, we're actually going to be sampling next week on the 19th. That's our first sampling event. So as soon as we have those samples collected, we're going to send them to the lab, and I'm going to ask the lab to expedite the phosphorus analyses so we know where we stand in phosphorus right now. That's going to be really key in helping us identify where we're going for this growing season. So I'm worried. I'm worried at this point because it has been a very wet spring. So we'll, once we have the data next week, I'll have a better sense of where we're going.
So Fred, a very wet spring means that nutrients are being flushed into the lake, right?
Correct. I mean, remember last year, we were out on the lake less than a week before the HABs hit, and our phosphorus concentrations were some of the highest in June for the last 20 years. They were, and that was throughout the lake, that the phosphorus concentrations were the highest we've seen in 20 years, and that was less than a week before that HAB hit. So that's really what's going to drive the development of the algae is, again, it's always those three things. It's temperature, it's nutrients, particularly phosphorus, and it's, still water conditions. So I'll have a better sense next week once we have the phosphorus data.
Fred, are they all the sampling sites going to be tested next week?
Yes. So we have 11 stations. And we we expanded the monitoring to not just include total phosphorus, but soluble reactive phosphorus, which, so total phosphorus is sort of like the food for the algae. The soluble reactive phosphorus is sort of like candy. That's the stuff they're gonna feed on right away because they need the least amount of energy to assimilate that dissolved inorganic phosphorus. So that's going to be telling if that's elevated as well. So we did expand the monitoring program for the standard water quality monitoring. So that will be initiated next week.
All right, let me just comment. From what I learned from you, there's two things that are different this year in the rainfall. Last year, we had very short bursts of very heavy rainfall, very heavy storms. Didn't last very long. This year, the rains have been much more gentle. They've been very frequent, much more gentle. The water level is 3 inches over the top of the dam, much like it was this time last year. So that the rainfall's been extensive but different. And the other thing is—
Yeah, but keep in mind though, when I said that was for June. You know, in terms of those intense rainfalls followed by a couple days of sunny weather. That was in June. If you look at last spring, it was very similar to this spring. Just a lot of rain, a lot of, again, similar, those gentle, long day, rainy days. I mean, where I am in Chester Springs, Pennsylvania, over the last, I'd say 2 weeks, we've had at least 4 days of just, you know, those gentle rains. And last spring was the same. It was June where we started getting into that pattern of those intense rainfalls, you know, followed by a couple days of sunny weather. But hydraulically, we're on that same trajectory. Again, June might be cool, and if it is, if June is cool and stormy, then that will help to minimize or delay a bloom. If it's similar to last year, or if it turns out to be very dry, that could spell trouble. So June's the critical, you know, month in terms of whether or not we're going to get a HAB early in the season. But I really want to see what the May phosphorus concentrations are like, because that will help me know, okay, are we on more of a normal year, or are we heading into something that could be problematic?
Fred, how quickly will you be able to get the results?
I'm going to put them, so we're going to be sampling on the 19th, which is next Tuesday, so a week from tomorrow. I'm pushing to get the results by Thursday. So hopefully within 48 hours, I'll have that data. The other thing too, and you know, Colleen mentioned this, and this is a really good point. I mean, yes, the weeds are problematic. We did have a mild winter, which could mean more weed growth. And if we do have more weed growth, that can help to minimize algae blooms as well, because there's competition for nutrients, there's competition for light, and especially in those shallow areas. I've been saying this for decades. I mean, you don't want a lot of weeds and you don't want algae, but of the two situations, the lesser of the two evils is more weeds, because the weeds don't generate cyanotoxins. So if we have problems with weeds, that may help to minimize the impact of HABs. But, you know, that's just one aspect of the whole ecology of the system that we're going to take into account when we're out monitoring. We'll assess the plant densities and what we're seeing early in the season, and, you know, what's coming up relative to past years.
Is there any word on the state changing the standards to more of the federal guidelines, so it won't be as bad if we do get a HAB situation?
Yeah, we've been working on that. I mean, that's been, you know, we've supposed to have a meeting with them, but that's been postponed a number of times. I can't remember when we're having the, and if Marty, you may be able to provide information. I can't remember when the next meeting is scheduled, but I have a follow-up email I need to send to EPA. I've been working with someone from EPA about this, but the state was very open and receptive to having more than one standard, and having this multiple threshold where you wouldn't just go from 0 to advisory. There'd be more of a caution level in between.
Yeah, I've actually got a statement from DEP. Josh knows about this, that we were given that we could read at tonight's meeting about where they are. I don't know if you want to take it now, Ron, or if you want to take it in order, but we do have a statement from DEP.
We might be able to move into the foundation updates now, I think.
Okay, before commissioner comments are over, I was using some of my idle time here to look up the funding information, and I'm looking at state statute 12:7-73, which also references our law, which is the Lake Hopatcong Protection Act. So 12:7-73 says the fee for a 48-month power vessel operator's license required pursuant to section 3, actually 12:7-72, shall be $18 and shall be paid to the chief administrator of the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission of the revenue derived from the fees imposed by this subsection beginning July 1st following the date of enactment of this law. The sum of $500,000 shall annually be credited to and deposited in the Lake Hopatcong Fund established pursuant to Section 12 of our 58-4B-12. So it doesn't say, all it says is we get $500,000, anything else above that goes to the general fund. So if it's $18 for 48 months, that would equal $4.50 per year. So if we took our $500,000, $450, that would mean that we would need 111,111 operator license holders in the state to fund our $500,000, if my math is correct.
But it says from the fund. So the fund has to produce that 500.
Yes. It says that the sum of $500,000 shall annually be credited to and deposited in the Lake Hopatcong Fund.
No, but
it says the revenue derived from the fees.
Right, from the fees. So you can only fund from the revenues you derive.
Right, and the way I read this, we get funded first. The first $500,000 up to the first $500,000 collected comes to us. Over and above that goes to the general fund. So what I guess they're saying to us is, listen, we don't have the $500,000 that's been collected. So that means we have less than the 111,111 operators.
Yeah.
If you
Anyway,
believe,
it's just for information.
I wonder if they charge a processing fee or take something off the top.
It doesn't say anything about that.
I know.
I guess that what we really need to know is the number of motorboat operator licenses that get issued each year.
Sure, Motor Vehicles has all that data.
And that is the information, as Colleen alluded to, that Senator Bucco has requested.
all right, anybody else before we move on? Okay. Lake Hopatcong Foundation update. Marty, you're up.
Thanks, Ron. Well, let me start with, since I was interested in it, we did get a statement from DEP today, and the reason was because someone may have to mute. Okay. Originally, DEP had hoped to appear before this meeting tonight, the May meeting, to brief what their new policy was. Unfortunately, they had to staff this policy up to the governor's office, and it, as you can imagine, with what's going on right now, it did not get a quick turnaround at the governor's office. So it's still not the official policy they're ready to brief, but the official statement from DEP, and I think there's hope in these words. I really do. DEP will reach out to key stakeholders, including the Lake Hopatcong Commission and area representatives, to solicit input on a new tiered advisory system. The new system is designed to clearly communicate the risk of adverse health effects and the potential for toxin production so that recreational users have the information necessary to make important decisions.
Hear, hear.
So I think the fact that they've talking about a new tiered advisory system, was something that did come out from the various lake groups. And I think there's reason for hope there, that they listen. Fred, you may want to comment on that because you sat through all those meetings, or Colleen. But I think that's a positive note, a positive chord, and hopefully that will result in an improved policy.
Yeah, that is good news. I mean, we have, when we had that meeting with them in Trenton toward the end of last year, I mean, that's what we were really suggesting. And the fact that they're taking this into serious consideration is good news. And I think they understand that, number one, last year's communication was just, it just was not up to par the way it should. And number two, that many of the other states have a tiered approach, and it seems to be working, and it's something that an educated lake user can use and make decisions on, whether or not to recreate, and if they do, how they want to recreate.
So as far as other news goes, as most groups, the Lake Hopatcong Foundation, our staff continues to work remotely. We're trying to get our full agenda done, but obviously most of our programming that was all scheduled has gone by the wayside. The block party will now occur hopefully in October. In fact, actually, that and the Lake Loop will form one weekend on October 10th and 11th. So hopefully it'll be a big community weekend. Here again, fingers crossed that everything allows both events to come off. The floating classroom, unfortunately, will not be put in the lake this year. The decision was made that since all the school groups have canceled, it just did not make a lot of sense. There's no reason to think we're going to get camp groups this summer that would be able to go on it. So it's going to unfortunately remain in dry dock. I guess you could say a good news is the Mislata cruise boat was put in today with their fingers crossed. So you may have seen that up here on the lake today. They've canceled. They're canceled for the first part of the summer, but they're hoping that they can salvage part of the summer. The Lake Hopatcong Foundation will still go forward with their native plant sale, which hopefully some of the folks on the lake will want to help use for riparian buffers and some of the gardens we've been discussing, the rain gardens. That's going to be held on May 23rd. We're hoping that people will order ahead of time. We'll be getting a lot of publicity out about that over the next 2 weeks. The goal would be to sell as many plants as we can ahead of time and have people just pick up. Or we will even drop off with anybody around the lake at their garage if they prefer. Right now it's still open whether we'll have any actual kind of a sale that day. Obviously nursery and garden centers are allowed to be open. We're trying to avoid that to maximum extent possible. Other than that, we're trying to do some remote programming since our live programming has been largely canceled. Our annual fundraising event, the gala, which we usually hold at the yacht club, will be a virtual event this year. We're going to try to put out as much education and information we can. Colleen's been doing a great job organizing the rain gardens and all. We're hoping to, be able to push that. We even would like to install a riparian buffer. Fred has said he'd help us with some of the design on that at the train station, at the Lake Hopatcong Foundation offices to show people what that could look like instead of just having your lawn go all the way down to the lake. And we continue our efforts on advocacy. Obviously, as you all already highlighted, it's going to be brutal, the funding situation in New Jersey. And right now, we just want to find ways to keep our head above water and try to do what we can for the community, because I know we had all had grand hopes of really upping the state's commitment toward its lakes, and all the right words were said, but with what's happened since then, we all know what kind of battle we're going to be in for any kind of funding at all. So I think that's our report. I'm happy to take any questions that anybody might have for us.
I just want to say one thing. I just emailed Colleen what I was talking about earlier, what the legislative offices put together for the senator. So maybe Colleen could distribute it to everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And if you're going by our offices in Roxbury, here's my suck up for Mark and for Rich. If you're going by our offices in Roxbury, please stop by and look at the gardens. They're off to a great start this year with all that rain Fred keeps talking about. They didn't like the snow too much the other morning, though.
No.
But thank you, folks.
Today. Oh, God.
Ron, you there?
We're ready to move on to Princeton Hydro.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just a few things I want to mention. So I did provide a memo to Colleen, and I believe she distributed it. It's a quick summary of what's going on. So I'm going to use that as a guide. Wanted to mention the Watershed implementation plan. So that is being finalized. We received comments. Pat, one of our environmental scientists, integrated all the comments. There are just a few minor issues he needs me to address. So I'm hoping that final Watershed implementation plan will be available for the commission in June. So we should be able to have that complete and available to everyone by the next meeting. Remember that Watershed implementation plan lists all sorts of projects that we identify so that we can potentially go for funding for implementation through 319, NIFWIF, and some other sources of funding. Item 2, I already mentioned that our first full lake water monitoring event will be on the 19th of May. So that's our standard monitoring. I do want to mention that we've had people out in the field along the shoreline and even on the lake collecting samples and doing some field work associated with the HAB grant. Princeton Hydro, we have our own set of established field protocol that I developed for all of our field people, whether they're engineers or scientists. Everyone has to adhere to that protocol even before it was necessary to wear face masks. Especially 2 people on a boat. Especially the boats we have, it's very difficult to, practice social distancing. So, wearing gloves and having face masks, they need to do that. We also have letters for each state. We've gotten authorization to be in the field as an essential but not a life-associated company. So we're identified as being in the field. So anyone who's out in the field, we make sure that they have a copy of our protocol, field protocol, as well as that copy of that letter. So if for some reason they're pulled over or someone's asking, what are you doing out here? They have information. So we took care of all that. And as a matter of fact, every time we were out on the lake, we made sure to reach out to the state park and let them know that we're out, just in case anyone was wondering, hey, what's that boat doing out there? So associated with that, with the HAB grant, so we have been working on a number of tasks associated with it. First off, we submitted the sampling plans to the state, which are the quality assurance protection plans. We submitted 2 for Lake Hopatcong. One is our standard long-term monitoring. The other is all the water quality monitoring associated with the HABs grant. And remember, that was a monetary match that the commission is paying for as a contribution toward the HAB grant. We filed all of the necessary permits and approvals for the various projects that are going to be implemented. There's only one we're working with to get approval for the biochar, but all of that information has been, it's either we're working on it or we've already submitted everything. We've had a number of kickoff meetings with the commission, foundation, and the towns about the scope of work. We also had a separate meeting with the Township of Roxbury about the phosphorus treatment that's proposed for that section of the lake, as well as discussions on the aeration systems that are being proposed. We've also conducted a whole series of field site assessments for the installation of biochar. And if you're not familiar with it, biochar is essentially this processed wood material that has a high affinity to remove nutrients. So two really good things about this material. Number one, it's not that expensive. Number two, when you're done with it, you can use it as mulch. So it's sort of like a green technology in that you're not throwing it in the garbage or in a landfill, and it's not expensive to dispose of. You can literally just use it as mulch or as a soil amendment. So we're hoping that this biochar is something that we'll be able to use in the future. And the towns seem to be very interested in it as well, because of the fact that once you're done with it, you can then use it as a soil amendment or as a mulch. I did get an email a couple hours ago from Pat, who, again, another one of our field scientists. He had a really good site assessment meeting with Rick Blood at Roxbury, showing potential locations. But as Colleen mentioned, we submitted that field report that identified a number of locations that we're looking at. In the last page of the report, we make our specific recommendations for the locations of biochar. Now, those are our recommendations just for the grant. We're going to evaluate this material, but this is something that we may want to look at installing in all the locations that we've surveyed. We've surveyed at least 15 or 16 locations, but we only have money to do maybe, originally we said 4, but given how inexpensive the material is, I think we can easily do 8 or 9. So we're looking at various ways of using it in some of the existing stormwater infrastructure, using it in some small local wet ponds, and possibly using it, right at the site where the water flows into the lake. J.P. Bell, who's the project manager for this project, he had an extensive conversation with biochar, and the real key to having real high affinities of removal for phosphorus is contact time. So if the water's moving swiftly, you may only get 60 or 70% removal, which is still pretty good. But where we're looking at installing it, maybe say in like Duck Pond and Memorial Pond and some of those stormwater basins where the water will sit a little longer, we may be able to get up to 90% removal of the phosphorus. So we're really interested in evaluating how this material works in the field. There have been a number of studies done that says, how this material is going to work. Related to that, again, JP, the project manager, he is meeting with the Borough of Hopatcong, the subcontractor we're using, as well as the commission and the foundation at the aquafilter stormwater structures in the parking lot for the Hopatcong Beach Club. They're going to do an initial assessment of those basins to see what they look like, and I talked to him before this meeting. It sounds like that's going to be scheduled for Thursday. So that will be going on. The only other thing I want to mention is we're going to actually this year we're going to start using what's called a Phycocyanin Meter, which measures a pigment exclusively used by the cyanobacteria. We're basically following what DEP says that they want to do. So to make the decisions on whether or not to post an advisory, that's based on cell counts. Well, to do cell counts, as you take the sample, you have to send it to a lab. It takes, the sample has to settle, you have to process it, you have to, look at the cells, identify them, enumerate them, and then get the data off. So it could take, a couple days to get that data. DEP is working at establishing these relationships between the cell count and measurements of phycocyanin. So this year, we're going to start using a phycocyanin meter to actually, every time we do a cell count, we're going to use the meter to see if we can develop a relationship specifically for Lake Hopatcong. And the value to this is we'd be able to, you could have a meter and just go out immediately and verify whether or not you have a problem, as opposed to waiting for cell count data. And this is something that DEP is working on as one of their ongoing research projects, but we want to get involved in this as well. I mean, this might be something in the near future. Towns or associations or beach clubs may be able to invest in one of these meters and and have, you know, even a trained lifeguard go out and measure the phycocyanin level in the lake to see, you know, where they stand relative to the cyanobacteria. So that's something associated with the HAB project that we're working on. And then finally, the only other thing I want to mention is I do owe Colleen a statement on the costs associated with the dredging for the quarry project. I did provide some text to the president of our company, Jeff Gall, who's also a PE. I want him to take a look at those numbers so that I can provide them to Colleen, who in turn will provide them to the attorney. So that's what we're working on right now. We're going to continue to work through the HAB stuff. Colleen submitted all the contracts. We submitted a recommendation for advance payment. And Colleen, I don't know if you saw that latest email, but we do have 60 days to pay the bill on the Phosphlock product. So that's something that we have for them. So that would be, you know, I'm hoping DEP will be able to provide that advance payment before the 15th of July, which is when that bill would be due. And again, that's something that we, Princeton Hydro, worked with CPRO on to arrange that.
All right, thank you.
So, yep.
I just had a question for Fred. Fred, when's that estimate for the dredging you think going to come out? And is it going to be a range or a fixed number?
It will definitely be a range, and there'll be a couple scenarios. And yeah, as the attorney mentioned, you know, I'm leaning toward a scenario where it's going to be difficult to do the project. And I say that because a difficult project means more expensive, means, you know, there's going to be a lot of logistics. There's not a lot of space to provide, you know, for temporary storage. So I'm just thinking worst case scenarios when I put those numbers together. It will definitely be a range because we just don't have enough information to give an accurate estimate. But the attorney said we don't need an accurate estimate. We just need a range to show them, hey, this could potentially cost this much money.
Right. Yeah, that's what he was looking for. And that is what he was looking for, and that's so they have a start to the negotiation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm back, Colleen.
Fred, one quick question. Do we have a plan B if these tests show very high phosphorus levels? Do we have a plan to address it?
Well, I mean, a lot of the projects that we're doing as part of the HAB grant are the projects that we're doing to mitigate these issues. For example, the Phosphlock I mentioned, which is a product that absorbs phosphorus, that would be applied directly to the lake. And we're doing the landing area because it's sort of tucked out of the way. It's a shallow area that does experience HABs. So that will be really important to do that treatment. And again, we're looking to do that in mid-June, and we have to get the order in by the end of this week. So we'll do that with CPRO because it's going to take time to get this product, you know, processed and get it shipped out. We have to coordinate with Roxbury in terms of where we're going to stage it and applying the product. It's going to be like a 50-acre area. We want to do it in mid-June because that's when we see those high phosphorus concentrations. So we have that project. We have the 3 aeration projects, you know, to evaluate if we use nearshore circulation of various technologies. Will that help to mitigate some of these HABs in some of these beach areas? We're going to be evaluating Green Clean, a non-copper-based algicide, evaluate how that can keep the cell counts under control along a beach area. We're also, you know, the Biochar is more of a watershed-based thing. So these projects are designed to help evaluate and mitigate, you know, how we're doing in terms of keeping those cell counts under control. So if a bloom does occur, we have these measures that, you know, at least for some sections of the lake where we are evaluating them, hopefully we see some relief.
I also think it'd be important if you could convince them to change the standards to the federal, because last year we would probably had nothing closed. Like, you know, it should be the same in Greenwood Lake on both sides, and then the same in Greenwood Lake on both sides, and then the same thing here.
Yeah, unfortunately, once you talk, I'm sorry. You know, once you're talking federal, now it's really out of my control. Now you're dealing with EPA, and that's something that what I can tell you is EPA is in the third year of a 3-year project where they are evaluating and determining whether or not cyanotoxins need to be regulated compounds, but that's only for drinking water. They're not doing it for recreational, at least not yet. So I do have someone I'm talking to at EPA, and I can suggest that, but that's really out of my control in terms of even just making a recommendation. At least with New Jersey DEP, they sat down with us, they spoke with us, they understood the concerns. So there was some level of negotiation there, but the federal level is something that's definitely out of my control.
Yeah, because another year with these businesses, if we have that HAB like last year, we might not have anything to save.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I feel horrible for the businesses around the lakes, because talk about a 1-2 punch. I mean, last year it was the cyanobacteria, and if that wasn't bad enough, now we have to deal with the COVID-19 stuff. I mean, they were suffering even before we even heard the word COVID-19. So I feel really bad for them. And so, hoping this is a better year, and hopefully we can get the COVID-19 under control. But yeah, I really feel bad for a lot of the businesses that are suffering.
Fred, do you know, as DEP recalculates their advisory system, will they be using that cell count data?
Right, yeah, they will continue to use the cell count data. Like I mentioned, though, they're looking at sometime in the future, they would like to use the Phycocyanin Meter instead as a surrogate, but they need to do a lot of research.
That's what I meant. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So they'll be using that meter.
I can't say when they're going to be using it. All I can tell you is when we've had meetings with them and at their public seminars, they said they're doing research on it and they're finding some good relationships between cell counts and the Phycocyanin readings. So I can't tell you when they plan to do that. All I know is that they're finding some good relationships that they're hoping they can use in the future.
I mean, if we're selling these meters or advocating the meters to local beach associations, I'm sure that would be the first question they would ask. Is that the same meter that DEP?
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, we actually purchased one of the meters. DEP evaluated 3 meters, and I did ask them, was one better than the other? And they said, no, all 3 of the meters seem to be working, well in terms of the relationship. And right now, I wouldn't recommend anyone buy any of these meters at this point, because, the cheapest one is maybe $3,000, number one, and number two, this is years away. I mean, I can't imagine they're going to be using this year or next year. Maybe in 2020, maybe in 2022, but I don't see this being something that they're going to recommend this year at least. So I wouldn't recommend anyone jump on this. I know we're doing it because we want to see if we can establish relationships, particularly for Lake Hopatcong, because if we can establish a relationship and we can help nudge them, that might be a way of accelerating that process. But it's so preliminary. I mean, it's in the research phase at this point.
So are you saying the new advisory system is going to take that long? to be
No,
treated?
keep in mind, the new advisory system will rely only on cell count. The new advisory system is different than the Phycocyanin meters. They're two different issues.
Okay.
Okay, Fred, are you done with your report?
Yep.
Anybody have any follow-up with Fred? Okay. State Park, Josh, are you ready? Or Melissa?
Sure. Melissa, you want to give a water level update?
Right now, probably everyone's already been. Due to the rain, it's over the dam. But other than that, we're continuing to manage the gate as we normally would, the gates. That's really all I have for now as far as water level goes.
Okay. And you want to give a weed harvesting update of what they've been working on and where they're at right now?
So right now I only have one person working. I have Mike Calderio on duty, and he's been continuing to do as many repairs as he can with what he has. He's been working on the machines, and the other gentleman's been out as he's a high-risk individual. Outside of that, not much else.
Okay.
What have you got?
Melissa, do you have any information on how the weed disposal fees have changed from year to year, it seems?
So I believe this year I have reached
over 7,000. It's half the operating budget, I think.
Right. So for 2 years we weren't paying for weed disposal. We started again last year in May and June, and the two vendors we were using were maintaining their fees. They didn't change their fees. Then we had to switch, and in the interim, while getting some issues resolved, we had to go to SCUMA, who charged a lot more to dispose weeds. And we really didn't have many other alternatives at that point until we were able to resolve. I think we had to do some lab work to get our samples tested. And we returned back to MUA, who was really helpful in taking our weeds. And they did inform us. So they were the ones that were charging us, I believe, only $4 a cubic yard. This year, they had advised us last year that this year, when we return, they would be charging us the $7 per cubic yard.
Because we didn't pass the test, or that's just their fee?
That's because of all the, I guess they incur fees as well to be able to process what they process and take our weeds. So to balance out their costs, they shared that they would increase the rate that they charge us.
But it had nothing to do with their findings, like?
There's two different companies. So
yeah.
You have MUA that didn't have the concern, and then we had the private contractor that we were taking weeds to, Ag Choice. They had the concerns.
Okay.
Yep.
It just looks odd. It's half the parts and labor budget.
Yeah, SCUMA did charge a lot.
Okay.
Josh, if we had a way to get the water out of those weeds, let them drain a while, would that cut our costs down?
It certainly could, but the trick is then figuring out where to do that, and then you have to go back for the second time. So we looked into it last year. We weren't able to find any viable ways to do that. But if someone's got a big parking lot somewhere that they don't mind letting this thing, we look into that.
And Ron, I did reach out to MUA, and I asked them to share what contracts they have with any companies that have roll-off dumpsters. I need to place a call. He responded and told me just to give him a call back to further discuss that.
Okay, yeah, because if we just get rid of that water, that's the weight, and also gets rid of a lot of phosphate, which they were complaining about.
Melissa, when do you project being on the water?
At this point, we don't have a set date. You know, we're still trying to figure out what the actual budget's going to be for the harvest program. We're trying to get some answers. I know Carlene's been working with Luco and trying to get some answers, and I know he got some stuff, but I think we still have a lot of questions to figure out. So at this point, there is no scheduled date for start until we figure out what the budget's going to be.
All right. Anybody got anything about the quarry?
I don't have any updates on the quarry.
Colleen, where did we stand? Our attorney wrote a letter, right? Colleen.
Unmute yourself, Colleen.
Thanks. So we did, the commission's attorney did send a note. I'm getting an echo. So they sent a note, and my dog is being very distracting, sorry. But so they sent a note, and the attorney reached back out and requested some additional information, which Murphy did send back over to Weldon's attorney. And now we're just waiting for a response back, and DEP is still working with Weldon's attorney to I think, get together and discuss next steps.
And Colleen Murphy was also with that cost estimate for the dredging.
Yeah, that's what Fred mentioned earlier. He's working on, and we'll send that over to Murphy so he can get it out to the attorneys for Weldon.
That's an important number to start the discussion.
Right.
Okay, about anything about the MOU? Our MOU goes forward to June 30th, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Colleen did some budget work when we talked a couple of times during the last week or so. So we have enough money to cut the weeds from May 15th to June 30th. And we're stuck until we know we're going to get a new allocation. Is that how we stand, Colleen? Am I got the rights?
Well, I guess we have two options. Which is that I provided the numbers for what I believe it might cost. To move forward with a weed harvesting program for May and June. And the other option is to wait and see if we receive funding for July, for fiscal year 2021.
The May and June weed harvesting is limited.
Yes, it would be probably 2 to 3 harvesters. And that's if the state is allowing seasonal workers to come back. I don't know if anybody's heard anything about that yet, because if there's no seasonal employees, then that's who we rely on for the program.
It looks like the seasonals are being approved. I'm hoping to hear more later this week when I have the meeting with our director. But it looks like that's going in a good direction. So hopefully that won't be one of the obstacles. And one thing I do want to say about the weed harvesting, if you guys have money, we certainly are willing to do whatever you want. I mean, we are providing the service at your direction. So if I know we talked earlier about do you want to hold on money in case things don't come through? And make sure you have contingency money, or do you want to go ahead and spend that? We're going to really leave that decision up to the commission to determine. So depending on what you want to do with the budget, you let Melissa know, and we will do that. Now, Ron, I know you talked about last few months back that if we don't have weed harvest and you want the guys to do something else, I know you talked about cleaning out drains or stuff like that. Certainly those are things that we should probably discuss.
Just so you're aware, Ron looks like he might have dropped off the call.
Okay.
So I'm sure he'll log back in, but yeah, I think the first concern would probably be to actually get some weed harvesting done rather than work on the drains. That would be my understanding. And then, you know, the catch basins and stuff would be something to do in the off season, or if there were no weeds on the lake, like if there were less weeds like there were last year.
Okay.
Should we also listen to Fred's results on this phosphorus? Because Fred said the weeds help mitigate the HAB. And if we see a high phosphorus level and we cut all the weeds, and Fred, again, you're the expert. We need your help on this, but maybe leaving some weeds on a bad HAB year is better than cutting the weeds and letting the HAB get worse, because you can have a lake with weeds, but you can't have a lake with HAB.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of harvesting that occurs, I don't think it's gonna. You're not gonna devastate or wipe out the weed community. I mean, for how tight the budget is and what harvesting will occur, I mean, I can't envision that this year's harvesting is going to have a negative effect. Now, we'll, you know, again, I want to see what weeds are out there and the extent of growth when we're out next week. But we'll keep that in mind. But I just don't envision that this year's weed program is going to be that much, removing that much weeds that you're actually going to spark any sort of issue associated with reducing the weeds and triggering a bloom. Again, I'm more concerned about the phosphorus, and the point about the weeds was, hey, if we do have more weeds than normal, you know, the weird silver lining is a lot of times, especially in shallower sections of the lake, more weeds generally will typically mean less cyanobacteria. So.
Yeah, and I agree with Fred. There is the weed harvesting program would be substantially reduced for at least the months of May and June if the commission chose to spend additional funds towards that. And it would probably be directed towards freeing up areas like Crescent Cove where weeds are going to be, you know, pretty difficult to pass through if they need it.
Yeah, and I think, speaking of that, Colleen, I think we'd want some guidance on what areas specifically you'd want us to prioritize if we're going to have a reduced season.
Understood.
And I guess the next thing I have on my updates is the Citizen Advisory Committee meetings. It was funny because the last two meetings coincided with us closing state parks and then reopening state parks. So I was certainly had way too much going on to have either of those two last meetings. Now that we're open and you know, it looks like we're going to be planning on staying open, we will certainly look at getting back on track and rescheduling these meetings. So we just missed the May meeting, so I would look at probably our next meeting being the June meeting.
Okay. Well, I guess I don't see Ron back. Oh, Ron is back on. Hold on. Ron, you there?
It just keeps just popping out on me. I don't know what it's about.
Okay.
You got anything on grant updates? Fred pretty much covered that, right?
Yeah, just working towards, you know, getting our advance payment and getting some of the projects going. And then on, you know, the part of the grant that isn't Princeton Hydro is the rain art gardens. And we're working on getting that going as well.
And what about the committee updates? Anybody, land use?
So we had, Ken had his first meeting, which was in Jefferson. So that was to speak about an application that was over in the Nolans Point area. So Camp 6 had...
By the windlass analysis, right?
Yep, proposed a pervious parking lot there. So Ken spoke on that. We, reached out to the applicant as well. So I think going forward, that looks pretty good. I know that they had their meeting tonight. Jefferson had their meeting tonight. They were going to vote on whether that application would go forward. So I don't know what the outcome of that is, but
I'm sure that's what Eric is. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, their engineers still had some testing to do to see if the pervious system would operate as designed. So they were going to move forward with those tests. And I did have Princeton Hydro take a quick look at the pervious system. They had some comments, so I did reach out to the applicant just to let them know that if they needed additional assistance or if some of the engineering tests that they perform, if they show that maybe the water isn't going to percolate as they had anticipated, that they could reach out to Princeton Hydro as well. And so they were happy with that suggestion. And I guess we'll listen and hear what happens tonight with their land use board meeting if that one passes. We've also provided some letters to Roxbury, which is also meeting tonight. And Hopatcong has their next meeting on May 19th, I believe. So
okay,
we'll be reviewing those with the land use committee.
Anything new on ice retardants?
No, not that I'm aware of. Nothing new on ice return systems.
I don't have anything. I know we had the meeting with the mayors. I think that was late February, early March. I missed the March commission meeting because of being sick, probably with the coronavirus, I really suspect. But so I know the mayors had concerns about, I think the only concern that was expressed primarily was the idea of charging people fees or permits. I do think we need to circle back as a committee and then come up with something. I would recommend that the committee present to the commission, and then maybe we start going around to council meetings and pitching our proposal.
Okay.
But obviously before we do that, we would want to get the input and approval of the commission as a whole.
Absolutely. Okay.
We
good.
also, sorry, just to interject there, Josh had mentioned that there was some possibility for ice retardant system regulations to be included with the new administrative code. I don't know if that's still going forward.
Everything's on a standstill because everything's COVID right now.
Right. That's what I assumed.
So as soon as I hear more, we'll restart those conversations again.
Okay.
Good. Okay. The audit update. We got our audit report. Everything looks great.
Yeah, I sent that out for review. If anybody has comment, you could send that back to me, or if you want to communicate directly with the auditor, I can give that contact information out.
At some point, we should get a resolution to accept the audit report. So I don't know whether we want to do it tonight, if anybody or people want to look at it and have questions.
We only have the draft right now, so he'll need to send out the finalized.
Here's the real one. Everybody be prepared to make comments so we can accept the audit. Okay. So yeah, I guess you and Todd, you guys got those books in order and provided all the right documentation. So I'm sure he was satisfied with the way we're keeping our records.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got new items.
Well, I had included those if we wanted to move forward with something for the weed harvesting program. You have the the financial information to review. I don't know if the commission wants to move forward.
So our choices are to come up with this plan that we put together there to fund the weed harvesting for May and June and see what happens with the new fiscal year, or to do nothing. And how much money do they have left in from our 350?
They never received 350,000. So if you look at the current weed harvesting,
350.
correct. So if you look at the current weed harvesting balance, that sheet that I provided,
Yeah.
they're estimating that the fund will receive $400,000 this year.
Yep.
The commission received their 3 quarterly payments, and so if you subtract the 3 quarterly payments from the 400,000, that leaves about 291,000 to the weed harvesting program. And based on Melissa's operations report, the weed harvesting expenditures reached 331,000. I think that one of the parts orders will be canceled, so that will bring the total down to 296,000. So right now, based on the numbers that I have available to me, I'm estimating that the deficit for the weed harvesting program would be about $5,000. So we'd have to overcome that before we would begin paying for a program for May and June.
What does the finance people, anybody in the finance committee have anything to
I think
contribute?
I think at this point, I'm still a little confused about it. It might be wise to have a budget committee meeting to review our options and then make a recommendation. I don't know. What do you think, Ron?
Well, yeah, you're right. I think your finance has to take a look at it. I mean, between a rock and a hard place, you know, we don't have the money really, and we shouldn't be doing it. DEP should be giving us the money, but I can't see not cutting weeds. I don't think that's an option.
On the other hand, you don't want to spend the last money you have.
I get it. I get it. And why should we take them off the hook?
That's true. You don't want to do that.
The other thing it's very important to me is that we maintain our core function. That means an administrator, so we can have a presence and somebody to keep records and to have a presence, because back in 2016, I was chief cook and bottle washer. Everything was done off of my computer. I don't want to see us go back to those days under any circumstances.
So if we hold back what we need for operations, we won't have any money for the weeds.
You're absolutely right, Dan. I couldn't agree with you more. That's my big concern.
Yeah,
when I came to the commission when Dan was on, you know, when my first meeting, and you had, you know, $50 left or something.
Yes.
And there was no ability to do anything, and you don't want to spend everything and wind up in that same hole.
Yeah, we're taking them off the hook if we cut the weeds.
Exactly.
Well, the only reason we wouldn't have any money next year would be if there were no boat license fees collected, correct?
Right.
Well, it's the timing too, Todd, of the spending.
No, I understand that, but that's a statutory requirement. I mean, if money comes into the Lake Hopatcong Fund, we get it.
Right. So if only 350 comes in.
Understood, but it's not like we're going to go down to zero.
Well, do you know that in a state of emergency that maybe the funding might change?
Yeah, I'm not so sure it's as easy as you say it is. I mean, we have legal documents too that say the Park Service gets a certain amount of money each year, and we've had all of our available spending reduced by 50%.
Yeah, but you're subject to the budgetary process. The Lake Hopatcong Fund just comes directly from the boat licensing fee.
I mean, I get that, but government does interesting things when there's zero money coming in. They lock accounts and
Okay,
save it.
so the whole law was garbage to begin with. They can take money and
All bets are off when the
give it or
government.
take it.
I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is they could delay it. They don't have to give it to you at the times they say they're going to give it to you. They'll eventually give it to you. But
also, I think you
there's
have
a lot
to
that can go
realize,
on.
and unknown is that the budget process has been moved back 3 months. So I'm not sure anybody knows what impact that's going to have.
We're in a brand new world, folks.
Yeah, it's extreme emergency situation. They can do, the choice is pay the state troopers or cut the weeds. You know what they'll do, right?
Yeah, or keep the hospitals open. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you will eventually get it. I'm not guaranteed it's going to come in any sort of timely fashion.
But in the meantime, how do we pay for, let's say, July and August, Josh, to cut the weeds if we don't get the money? Who's paying those salaries? Who's paying?
That's something all I think has to be figured out yet, right? I mean,
Colleen, did you earmark how much money we need to operate our own operations at 145,000 or whatever that number is we do a year? We gotta maintain that, because as Dan said, we have to be able to operate whether or not we cut the weeds.
Right. So, I mean, part of this is that the commission won't receive their third quarter payment. So, or sorry, fourth quarter payment. So we've received 3 quarters. If that fund doesn't come above 400,000, we won't receive a fourth quarter payment.
And if we cut the weeds, you won't have enough money to pay you or any bills we have, right?
That's right.
Well, no, I mean, based on, this other table that I provided, it shows what the commission will need to spend through the end of fiscal year 20. So that's through June 30th. And
what about July 1, August, September?
We gotta
right. That's the thing. If there's no funds coming in on July 1st, then you'll be in trouble.
Then I don't know how we can cut the weeds. We need our operating money.
Right.
On the
You got
problem,
to reserve out your operating money from now till next June.
we could probably, Ron, squeeze out a year, but we then blow everything. And so we have to be extremely cautious.
Absolutely.
You don't want to deplete your funds. You do not want to do that.
No, because there's no way, we have no choice to get any more funds. We have no other place, alternative.
Been there, done that already.
Yep.
Doesn't work.
So I guess we have to not think about cutting the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Let them figure it out.
At least hold it off.
Yeah.
Even the limited May and June? I thought we had the 27,000 for that.
But then you won't have anything for us to operate on if we don't get any money on July 1. They're not telling you they're going to give you money on July 1.
There's no guarantees out of Trenton for the funding. That's the problem.
yeah, I mean, they like Ron said, they moved the fiscal period to the end of
They
September.
moved it to September, yeah.
So we are all in a new world. I don't even know when we're going to get our money in government.
Listen to Joshua. I've seen this before. Even though there's a legislative act, Todd, anything can happen in a state of emergency. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So our money's in danger.
I think it's pretty simple. Leave enough money to fund the administrative functions and keep the group together. And if you have anything left over, consider looking at weeds. I think it's pretty basic.
We also have
Take care of ourselves first.
We also have other obligations. The Princeton Hydro obligations for monitoring the lake for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
We've been paying for that. We don't want to interrupt that. That's the only way we may be able to show in the future that the lake's deteriorating if we have no money, and that's something we need to continue. The DEP never paid for that.
Colleen, figure out what you need till December 31st to operate our office, you and whatever other regular expenses we have, and see what's left after that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good approach. Ron, we already, we had gone through that whole exercise and came up with no new taxes or no new revenue sources.
Yeah.
The day might come, we have to revisit that.
Yep.
And try to find a way to fund the commission through improvement districts or
Some other
boat
way.
fees
Yep.
or landing fees or something.
Well, we had a suggestion with boat user fees that, Josh, that the state was willing to to enforce those, and we were looking into the possibility of doing that. I think that needs to be on the table again.
Trick with that is keeping the money here.
Yep, that was.
Yep.
Don't let it go to Trenton.
Right.
They forced it to go to Trenton, and then like what's happening with this COVID thing, they could take it and use it for something else.
That's right.
That's why we dropped it.
Yep.
Okay.
Not that
So
saying it
Colleen-
won't happen.
Okay, Colleen, you'll take a look then and see what you need to get to December 31 at least.
Right.
Okay. And Finance Committee going to meet? You guys want to take a look at what she put together and what we might need till the end of the year?
Yeah, we'll ask Colleen to set that up.
Yeah, do that. Okay. Anything else extra on this Rutgers rain garden program, or did we cover most of that?
I think we covered all of that.
Okay. We have no public.
Yes,
Okay,
there's public on.
items-
You got 7 members of the public. If anybody wants to speak, I think
Okay. Anybody
they
have
have to raise their hand and then I can unmute them.
Okay. Anybody from the public wish to be heard? Comment?
Maybe you have to tell them how to raise their hands, Colleen.
It's the only button I think that they have on their screen is one that says raise hand. So I'm not seeing anybody. Oh, we have one. So it's Karen Facito. Hi, Karen.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to say hi and hope everyone's doing well. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
You're
Now we
welcome.
know we can hear from the public.
Thank you, Karen.
It works.
Karen, you're going to take a picture of the screen?
Not this time, maybe next time.
Okay.
But I don't get to see all you guys. I only see the person talking on this, the way this is set up. I don't get to see all the little boxes.
I only see 5 anyway, so yeah.
I'll work on that for next time so you can see the full Brady Bunch effect.
Yeah, there's an option you can do that.
Yes.
No, I don't get that option as not being a talking member of this.
Colleen should have that option though. They set it up.
Okay. Yeah, I'll work on it for next time.
Okay.
I would say you're lucky looking at it.
Anybody else from the
That's funny.
public? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Action items. Now, we're not gonna take any action on the weed harvesting question, correct?
I don't believe so. It sounds like.
Well, if we don't do any action on the weed harvesting now, there isn't going to be any weed harvesting for the rest of the fiscal year.
Yeah. And what about the HABs grant? You guys need some action on expenditures?
I think I had that on there, but I don't think we need to take any action on that right now.
All right. So we're at the end of the road here.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Wait, so we're to tell our constituents there'll be no weed harvesting this season?
No.
No, just
No.
it's on hold.
It's on hold until they may fund it yet. We don't know whether they're going to fund it or not. They have time. We're just not going to fund it.
Ron, what's the part that they are canceling that they were ordering for the machines? Was that a critical
It
thing?
was about $10,000, wasn't it, Colleen?
About 35,000. So that was for all the parts for that small harvester, and some additional parts.
To get it going, you needed just 10,000 to get a couple machines on the lake, right?
Actually, it's all broken down in that table. I spoke with Mike Calderio and Melissa, and the parts that they absolutely need to get those harvesters going is actually about 1,200 to 1,500. But there's additional things. There's the dump trucks need work. There were oil filters. The main things were really like the fuel and the weed disposal, plus the cost of salary of those seasonal employees. So that brings it up quite a bit.
Well, let's see what happens with DEP now. They got to do something. Like, I can't believe they're going to sit back and not cut the weeds.
Josh, it's my understanding that even if you had funding now, you're not ready to go.
No, you're right.
It would take some time, but we'd be able to do it once we have the ability to hire seasonals. And Ron, just to your last comment, we are. I mean, I can't understate how much of a different world I'm in right now from a few months ago. I don't even know how we're going to keep the park service going, let alone a weed harvest program. I have to somehow have a budget through September, and we're usually broke this time of year because of the end of the fiscal year. So we are in a really, really different time period, and everything is different. And, you know, everything is COVID right now. And until this stuff starts settling down and we actually have time that we can sit down with the treasurer's office and figure out how budgets are working and how all this is going to figure out, we're all playing it week by week right now. We really are in a true emergency situation.
That's throughout the state, all the agencies.
Yes. I've never seen anything like this in my 20 years.
They're talking about massive furloughs.
Yeah, I mean, we are, I mean, I'll certainly will raise the concern, Ron, but, you know, I just really want to emphasize this, how different of a time we are right now.
And one of the biggest revenue sources for the state is sales tax, and that's collapsed.
Yes, that's right. They lost a ton of money for sales tax.
And what about income tax that was postponed for 3 months?
Right. You know, your bills come, but your income doesn't. Yep.
You have to make income before you get taxed.
Yeah, but I'm saying from the state standpoint of the agencies, right? They're not getting income tax till later, but the bills and payroll are still there. They're not getting sales tax, but their operating costs are still there.
Yeah. Well, it's like all of us.
Yeah, all the municipalities are in the same condition.
Hey, I'm paying school bus contractors not to take kids to school.
Yeah.
Right, because of the contract, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have that COVID clause.
Actually, we as a township, we're giving the school the money. It's coming out of the taxes.
Right.
We didn't do that 30-day grace period in Roxbury for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
We get the money from. We still got to pay the county and the schools.
Have the Lake Hopatcong municipalities done any layoffs yet or cutbacks?
Roxbury hasn't.
No, none that we're aware of at this point.
All right.
It's lake related. I haven't seen the county street sweepers go by my office. The street was still piled out in the sides of the road, so.
There have been some state police patrols on the lake, much to my surprise.
Good.
Yeah, they're out.
Yeah, you know, I ought to just mention that the state police started patrolling last weekend, and I understand the buoys started being placed out on the lake today.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a Morris County Sheriff person too, so thank you, Foundation, for,
Yeah.
I assume that was one of your patrols.
What they did is they put in
Sheriff Gannon, thank you.
just several buoys at the worst spots, not near. I only saw about 3 buoys in. Just to try to warn, if people are out there and don't know the lake boating, what's really saving them from disasters, the water's so high that you're liable to miss hitting the rocks. But the buoys, they've got, I think I've seen 3 in 3 of the worst spots. So it really was done very quickly just to pick the worst hazards.
Okay, guys.
Make a motion.
Thank you for your participation in an awkward situation.
Stay healthy, everybody.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy, be safe.
Thank you. Take care.
Well.